Welcome to the Historical Romance Sampler Podcast, the place for you to find new historical romance books and authors to fan over. I'm award-winning historical romance author Katherine Grant, and each week I'm inviting fellow authors to come on and share a little bit of their work and themselves. They'll read a sample of one of their books, and then I'm going to ask them a bunch of questions. By the end of the episode, you'll have a sense of what they write and who they are. Hopefully, you and I both will have something new to read. So what are we waiting for? Let's get into this week's episode.
I am super excited to be joined today by Britt Belle. Britt is an ex-collegiate volleyball player with an undergraduate degree in history, a former elementary school teacher, and the mother of 3 daughters. She started reading historical romance in high school, but she didn't start writing until after her second daughter was born. She spends her free time transporting her girls to dance rehearsals, bantering about sports with her husband, and eating entirely too much Mexican food. Britt, I'm super excited to have you today. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so you're reading from your kickoff of a series, The Earl Was Wrong.
Correct. Yep. It's the first book that I published. Yeah, it's the first book in the series, and the second one is coming out soon.
That's so exciting. What scene are we going to hear today?
I'm going to read right from the beginning. So chapter 1, just starting the story off.
Awesome.
All right. The Earl Was Wrong, chapter 1. London, late February 1815. Sebastian Albert Grey, the 6th Earl of Greydon, should have expected to find his sister in a torrid embrace. He should have anticipated having to stride across the shadowy room to tear her from her lover's arm. And he certainly should have known that Lord Anthony, the 3rd married son of a bloody duke, would cower against the wall. "Go," he said, dismissing Lord Anthony with a single word. Lord Anthony did not move. "Go," Sebastian said, louder this time, as he took an infinitesimal step forward. Lord Anthony, shaken from his stupor, darted a quick glance of longing at Belinda and fled the private sitting room. Sebastian released a breath. This scene had become all too familiar. In the past month, he had caught his sister in compromising situations with 3 different men. He expected such behavior from their mother, but not from his younger sister. "Let go," he said quietly, holding out his arm. Instead of taking it, Belinda stood frozen, her face devoid of expression. "Belinda," he said sharply, his temper hanging by a thread. He wanted to shout at her, to break through the wall she hid behind, but he could not risk attracting the attention of the other guests who were gathered in the public rooms at the front of the house. With a slight tip of her chin, she reached out and laid her palm on the crook of his elbow. They swept from the room without another word. He wished he could slink out a side door, bundle Belinda into their carriage, and head for home. Unfortunately, if they disappeared, everyone would wonder why. Speaking out of a soiree was a sure way to invite question, so they had to return to the drawing room and hope they had not been missed. Thankfully, Belinda's flushed cheeks were the only sign she had been engaging in an illicit encounter. Nearly an hour later, Sebastian followed his mother and sister into the carriage. His mother stared out the window into the darkness, but Belinda looked directly at him. Seeing her green eyes, so like his own, narrowed in a glare, only increased desire. It was not unreasonable to expect his unmarried sister to avoid married men. The rain clattered loudly against the roof as the carriage started to roll forward. "One more time, and you will marry." His voice sounded cold, emotionless. It was the opposite of how he felt. Belinda didn't flinch at the threat of marriage. Her gaze didn't even flicker. Was it because she didn't think he would force her to marry, or because she intended to refuse? He had ignored her when she told him she did not want to go to London, because he had thought her hesitation was nothing more than nerves. He had obviously been. Was she trying to get him to send her back to Greydon Hall? Did she miss Edward, Jane, and Louisa? Or was it something else? "Lord Anthony is already married. His wife prefers the country," she said, twirling one of the dark curls that framed her face. "And he prefers innocent debutante," she smirked. "Not that innocent. Belinda," his voice held all the warning he could muster, "you could be ruined." He sounded like an overprotective mom. He didn't care. Men could stumble through life without making wise choices and still be tolerated, but women were not so lucky. She ignored his warning. "I was feeling a trifle faint. Lord Anthony offered to lead me to fresher air." And he thought to offer you fresher air by using his lips. It was just a kiss. It won't be just a kiss if someone sees you. Was she really so naive? Belinda dismissed his concern with a shrug. I won't be. God, I've caught you 3 times. You hardly count. You will not spread gossip, she paused. If you stop following me, you will stop catching me. I am exceedingly discreet. Her indignation was unfair, for no matter how discreet she might be, she could be discovered at any time. Everyone knew the lady was only as good as her reputation. I'm not following you. I am looking out for your best interests. Eventually, someone will see you. It was a miracle no one had discovered her already. Even if you avoid detection, Lord Anthony, Lord Summers, or Mr. Sims will brag to one of their mates. Girls are ruined every day. She laughed. It was not a tinkling sound that was supposed to come from the mouth of a debutante. Oh no, this was a laugh that proclaimed him a fool. A fool who had assumed he knew his sister, even though he had not seen her in the last 10 years. The decade apart had changed her, just like it had changed him. His plan to have her happily married by the end of the season seemed impossible now that she was in London. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw his mother smile. He braced himself. He had long since given up expecting proper behavior from her. He knew she did not see anything wrong with kissing relative strangers. Every time she left his siblings in the country and popped up in London, she was linked with a man. As she aged, the man only seemed to get younger. Whether she was searching for another husband or simply reveling in her freedom, he had no idea. He did not want to know. A kiss is nothing, she declared airily. I kissed him gently before I settled on my father. Arguing with her was an utter waste of time. However, he couldn't stop himself from saying, if that is true, you are lucky you weren't forced to marry some other gentleman. The Countess smiled again. Your father and I married for love. He grimaced. He knew all about his marriage. Everyone knew. Even 27 years later, the scandalous love match between an earl and a penniless girl was a story retold in whispers just loud enough to be overheard. It would have been romantic if they had been less demonstrative, or able to care about anything except each other. Instead, they had flaunted their love and ignored him. Belinda shall have the option to marry for love, too, as long as she stops lowering gentlemen into tyrants. Even though Sebastian did not know her reasons, he had given up hope that his sister was not the instigator. Really, dear brother, your time as Earl had made you prone to dramatics. I am not being dramatic, he said stiffly. When she was young, she had often begged him to twirl about the nursery with her. She had talked non-stop about her triumphant debut. What had happened to change her mind? He wished she would talk to him, but he only seemed able to invoke her anger. He knew why she was angry. He had abandoned her and the rest of his siblings when he inherited the estate at 16. He had left for London with their uncle Lord Blanche in a desperate attempt to learn how to be Earl so he could restore the estate's influence and reputation. He had succeeded in becoming a respectable lord, but the separation had cost him his family. For the past 10 years, he had done what he needed to do. His siblings did not know that the estate had been in shambles, riddled with debt, or that their father had left nothing but ruin. They did not need to know. When he had turned 18, he had become their guardian in addition to being their brother. He had an obligation to protect them. You worry too much, Belinda declared, as if her 21 years gave her vast insight into the human psyche he simply could not comprehend. He clenched his jaw. If I catch you again, I will be the one to choose your husband. She did nothing save raise one taunting eyebrow. I'd like to see you force me. Belinda, he groaned in frustration. Even though he threatened it, he would never force her. I don't want to force you. I want you to choose. You do not. I want to see you happy. No, you don't. If you wanted to see me happy, you would stop me around. She paused, and you would have left me at Greydon. You can't stay at Greydon forever. Do you want to end up a spinster? She shrugged, one elegant shoulder rising and dropping. He wanted to support her, but he didn't know how. He unclenched it. What do you want? He asked softly. Her mouth settled into an expressionless line as the carriage came to an abrupt stop. Without acknowledging his question, she climbed out and disappeared into the house.
What an interesting setup. We've got the dutiful heir who's now the Earl and is responsible for his family, and they are just the worst. I can't wait to see how he evolves through the story to perhaps find balance with that.
Yes, that is his whole journey.
Well, I've got lots of questions for you, but first we're going to take a break for our sponsors.
The Historical Romance Sampler Podcast is a proud affiliate of Libro.fm. Libro.fm is a really cool audiobook retailer that offers the same selection of audiobooks at the same price that you would find at that other really big audiobook retailer. But instead of sending your money to a giant monopoly, your money with your purchase of Libro.fm audiobooks goes back to the local bookstore of your choice. That way you can purchase audiobooks but still support your local literary community. Also cool is their Kiss Club, which features romance audiobooks on sale every month. If you're ready to sign up for Libro.fm, I've got a good deal for you. Using the code HISTORICAL, as in Historical Romance Sampler, sign up for a new membership and get 3 audiobooks for the price of 1. Check out the link in my show notes if you want more information. And now, back to the episode.
So I am back with Britt Belle, who just read a sample from the Earl Was Wrong. And one of the things that stood out to me in that scene you were reading is our hero is really dealing with a sister who is pushing the limits and expressing that she doesn't want the marriage life that he is planning for her. And I feel like we often see that in the heroine of the novel, and we don't often see it from the brother's point of view. So can you talk a little bit about why you decided to explore it through Belinda's point of view?
Well, I think that I guess his whole thing is that like he feels really bound by duty and he really wants to do right by the family, but he doesn't fully grasp their point of view or their perspective or like what they want. And so a lot of his journey is figuring out, or I guess accepting that like just because something is how it's supposed to be, or that he assumes is how it's supposed to be, is not necessarily how it actually is. And so starting with that is really looking at sort of he is very rigid, especially in the beginning of the story, and sort of letting the reader see and sort of establish that perspective from him, because it really resonates with the romance part of it also.
Yeah. And there's so much of that that is like pulling from the historical romance world that we know of. There are rules and you can't break them. And so we readers know the stakes for Belinda, perhaps in a way that she doesn't know. So we're on his side, but we're also modern readers who can relate to her wanting to have some independence. So I'm curious, I know you also write contemporary romance. How is it similar or different to be writing historical romance with these rules that we all, know it's a very different world, and then also to be writing contemporary? Is it a similar writing experience?
It is and it isn't. I write in first person for contemporary, and that is somewhat easier for me, because you really get like to sort of go a little bit deeper in POV and like be that person. But the thing that is really similar in the kind of stories that I love to read and why I write them is I write like celebrity sort of sports. So there is rule
Mm.
a public person's life, even now, right? Because the way they're viewed is matters, right, to their brand, I guess.
Mhm.
And so there's a lot of connection, I guess, between that, even though the rules are vastly different, or maybe not vastly, but the rules are just certainly different. But it's sort of still the constraints of society and that society places on us and the assumptions that we make based on those constraints, right? Because we can break these rules. And then, right, there's just consequences, and how are those consequences going to affect it? So I feel like there's a thread that's very similar
Mhm.
in my books between sort of battling against the rules or the expectations and how you handle that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It is very like focused on like the reputation, which I think we all can feel our own reputation at risk sometimes.
Like, it's not on a large scale for most of us, right? But it's a very similar thing. Like how people view us matters to
Yeah.
us. And so it's the same, a similar thread, even though there's a lot of differences in how it is presented.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I read that some of your early romance books that you were reading were, Julie Garwood, Judith McNaught, Joanna Lindsay. How do those giants influence your writing as you're writing right now?
Yeah, so I mean, I love the I love the old school historicals, even now, even the ones that are outdated. That modern readers that didn't read them 25 years ago are like, a little bit cringy. But since I have that background, it's like my perspective is a little bit different. And I think I just really resonate with the way they connected the stories. And there's a lot of like family sort of themes in those books that really kind of pulls me in. And really, a lot of historical romance is like, so I guess not political, but like it's very purposeful today. And I feel like it was less so then. It was more about the story. And I love that. Not that I don't love more modern stuff too, but that's just feels like sort of the foundation of what I love about historical. And so when I'm writing, I channel some of those emotions that I felt then when I was writing books, and I'm trying to pull that out.
Yeah, that's interesting. And the family storyline is clearly important in this series that you're writing too. So I can see how that is influential.
Yeah, for sure.
And you have a degree in history. So I'd love to hear like what kind of research do you do for your books?
So I'm less like strict, I think, than a lot of writers and a lot of readers. I don't mind so much if there's some liberties taken. Of course, I mean, I do, of course, do research, and I do want it to feel authentic, but I'm okay with like little details being inconsistent. I know some readers are really bothered by that. So, I mean, I feel like a lot of my background in writing historical is just because I've read like hundreds and hundreds of them. So it's not research per se. It's just like about the feeling that you get from those stories. I mean, I do have tons of craft books and things like that I use and, to check certain things. And I do love when authors add, in the notes or something like something real that happened within the fictional world, that exists in the story. But I'm not like pulled into it either, the way
Yeah.
some historical authors are.
What era of history did you research in your degree?
Pretty broad. Mostly I looked at United States history, but we had to take a pretty broad discipline, I guess, and we had to have, parts of everything. I like seeing the parallels between the present and the past. Much in the same way that my historicals and contemporaries have that. Like I like thinking about the people and how they were different, but also how like a lot of things like on the inside have stayed the same.
Yeah. Are there any like historical eras or maybe events that you've studied that aren't in the Regency period that you really wish or hope to write a book about?
No, but maybe the other period that I really love in historicals is like the Gilded Age, the New York sort of environment. I don't know if I'll ever write in it. I'm a very like intuitive writer, so I can't like plan it. The ideas and the characters have to come, and then I just have to like sit down and start writing and figure out where it goes. So I decide that like I want to write this or that because it's just not the way that my brain works.
Yeah. So what does normally come first? Is it typically dialogue, characters, some plot idea?
It's definitely characters and just like a general sort of like thought about like what their struggle could be, a lot of like what their conflict is, like, the depth of like who they are and what they want and what they think they want versus what they really want. So it's a lot of character for me first. The early part of the writing is a lot of deleting, actually. Like for this book, I wrote like four prologues probably. It's just not even a prologue in the book anymore because like none of them worked, but I needed them all to know what happened before. Even though the words are never in the book, like I know their backstory, and that matters because it like informs what they do and how they decide things. So I end up writing things that I don't use or I don't need or have to cut.
Yeah.
Like chapters, especially in the early, that I love but they don't work for the story, and then it's like delete.
Yeah. That's interesting. So it's very character based. And are you a visual thinker or is it really you have to be writing to get your imagination going?
I have to be writing, but also like I find a lot of times when I get stuck, particularly in the middle-ish part, like where is this going, that I have to like step back, and then, I'll be like cutting vegetables for dinner or like driving my kids somewhere, and I'll be like, I got it. I know, like I know what has to happen. I know the direction it has to go. So it's a lot of like patience, and, sometimes it's a lot of words and sometimes very slow and painful, but just waiting for it to come and like trusting that I will get there.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm similar. I mostly am writing when I'm creative, but then there are times when I'm like, I'm stuck. And then I stand up and leave the room, and just walking, I have like, oh, obviously this is the solution. I don't know why I couldn't think of that while I was sitting down.
Yes, absolutely. Like that was one of the biggest lessons maybe that I learned as I got further into writing, is that sometimes you really have to just step back,
Yeah.
take a walk, or like go have a snack or something, because your brain is still working on that thing even when you're not like prodding it to.
Yeah. And tell me more about your journey to become a writer. I know you started writing historical romance after your daughter was born, or your second daughter was born. Was that something you'd been thinking about for a while?
I mean, always, when you love reading, you always like, at least for me, I always imagined it kind of, but like life. And so then I had my daughter, and I was teaching at the time, and it was just a lot. And it became sort of just a way to like relax almost, like put
Mm.
all of real life aside. And then COVID happened, and my kids were home all the time. So I like had to set it aside because it was too much. And then I had my third daughter, and then I went back. She finally started preschool. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to try to really see if this can happen. And then it just kind of started to really come along. It helps me if I'm writing pretty consistently. Um,
Mm.
so I need it, like I need a little bit of time, not every day, but like multiple times a week. Otherwise, I really get out of a routine with it.
And do you feel like your background, I mean, I think of collegiate sports as requiring a lot of discipline and practice. Do you find that that informs your experience as a writer?
For sure, because it's the same, it's mental instead of physical, but it's the same, like you have to do, you have to you have to sit down and do it, or you have to get into the weight room when you're in sports. You have to get, it's all those little things, and it's the same thing. Like sometimes the story is not, it's not always fun. It's mostly always fun, but like there are the standards, like the story's not coming and you're getting frustrated, or, and that you just have to keep sitting down and doing it. So I think that the discipline part of it is really similar, because especially if you're not on deadlines, I'm an indie writer, so my deadlines are just in my own head. There's nothing
Yeah.
forcing it, right? So I have to be consistent, even though
Hmm.
there's no one like looking over my shoulder or push, it has to be in. So
I know in my experience, there's the whole mental game of writing, and then there's the mental game of publishing, and like seeing other people's books reviewed and trying to get your book reviewed, and like everything that comes with putting your work out there. Does that, I'm just guessing, I have no experience at all. I'm just imagining that that might be similar to like the difference between training and then competing, and like you have to have a different head game. Do you find that that's helpful, that you pull on that at all?
absolutely, yes. I mean, y- you have more control as an athlete in a lot of ways when because you physically can like make things happen or not make things happen. Where with publishing, like you put it out there, and then some things you do don't work, which I guess is similar to losing when you put everything out there. But it's a constant keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, and keep trying things. So I think there's definitely parallels. Sports are good life lessons. Give us lots of good life lessons. Even in little kids, just keep trying. And when you fail, you go again, kind of thing. So I think all of that sort of definitely provides a foundation for me and keeps it going, because I didn't know what to expect. I
Hmm.
think most of us don't really, even if we do, even if you do a lot of research and you don't fully know how you're going to feel about it or how you're going to react to it. And
Right.
so that's been interesting. portion of the journey.
Yeah. I mean, you can do all the research on the tactics and the strategies, but you're never going to know how you yourself are going to react. And I find even one book release to another, I have very different reactions to how it's going. So even when I've already had experience, I'm still surprising myself with all the different kinds of crazy that can come out.
Absolutely, yes. I think in my head, like, okay, get this first book out, and then like it would feel easier. And it definitely is not.
Yeah.
I've only 3 books in, so I'm not that much, but like each one has been different. Each one has felt different. Each one has sold like it's all been different. There's been things that have been similar. And so that is interesting. Like a part of that is what drives it, right? Because it's like a little bit unknown and it's like a little bit exciting and it could go wonderfully and it could go horribly. And like a little bit that is what drives it, but also it surprises me sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I think it's time to play our game, Love It or Leave It. So, Britt, do you love it or leave it? Protagonists meet in the first 10%.
Definitely love it. I can handle it if it's a little bit like after that, as long as like the other things that are happening are interesting. But the sooner they get on the page together and the sooner you see them together, you know what their journey is going to be. So I definitely love it.
All right. Love it or leave it, dual point of view narration.
I love it. I do think I've never written it, but I do think you can do interesting things with single POV, especially if there's like a mystery or a secret or something that one character knows that the other character doesn't. But I think it's also a challenge to write that and show the other character. So I've never done it before, but I do like to read it sometimes.
Yeah, it changes the story because then it's really one character's growth journey and the other character is a part of their journey,
Right.
as opposed to having to write two characters' growth journeys.
Yes.
So, love it or leave it, third person past tense.
Love it. But as I said, I write first person present tense with my contemporary. So I am not I will read pretty much anything.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel that it's different? I think you said it's a little different writing first person versus third person.
Yes. For me personally, I find first person to write easier. Once I get into like the flow of third person, switching between the two is sometimes a little bit tricky, but once I get into the flow of it, it's okay. But I do think you can go a little bit deeper when you're getting into like thoughts when you write first person.
Yeah. I've sometimes had the experience where I am writing something in first person and then I'm writing something else third person and I am suddenly writing first person again. Like,
Yes.
so wait a second. Yes. Shouldn't I know? Like, shouldn't I not be this sloppy?
I do the same thing. And then it's like a couple paragraphs or like half of a page. And then sometimes I go back to the third person. I'm like, wow, I must have just really like been kind of deep into thought with it. And just my point of view became the point of view.
Yeah. All right. Love it or leave it. Third act breakup or dark moment.
Love it. I particularly love it when it's like something else when it's an external conflict and that they sort of have to overcome to make it work.
Yeah. All right. Love it or leave it. Always end with an epilogue.
Love it. I could read like bonus chapters of characters I love forever.
Wow.
That's also why I love series, right? And that's what historicals do so well is revisiting old characters in future books. The best.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it or leave it. Share research in the author's note.
I love it. But as I said before, I don't require it. I think it's interesting to know like what is driving that or like if they're inspired by like a specific person. I find it like super fascinating, but I'm also okay if they just make that person entirely.
All right. And are there any other romance rules I didn't ask about that you like to break or push the boundaries on?
Not really. I mean, when I write, I don't write with a plan. So like I do like sometimes kind of like flipping it a little bit and having a character react a little bit differently than like typical historical would expect. that is happening a little bit with this series with Belinda, who was introduced in that she is not sort of your typical debutante. And that thread runs throughout the series. And I just started working on her book. And so it's really like in forefront of my mind. So I do like that a little bit when it's like what you like a character that you expect, but then is like a little bit of a twist on them, on how they react, I guess.
Yeah. I love that. Well, that's the game, Love It or Leave It. And I've really appreciated this conversation. Where can our listeners find you and your books?
Well, I am published once. So I'm on Kobo and Amazon and Barnes & Noble and a whole bunch of other little spots. I have a website, brittbellebooks.com, and you can also find me on Instagram at brittbellewrite, I think.
I will be tagging you on Instagram, and I'll put your website in the show notes so everyone can find you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining the podcast.
Thank you.
That's it for this week. Check out the show notes where I put links for my guests, myself, and the podcast. Until next week, happy reading.